Good afternoon, everyone. We'll begin momentarily. We're letting people into the Zoom meeting right now, and we will begin in a moment. Thank you for being here, and thank you for waiting patiently. Well, I see we're a little after 12 o'clock, so I think we're going to go ahead and begin today. Good afternoon, and welcome to the December virtual, the word we've all learned to hate over the last 9 months, virtual monthly luncheon of the Covington Business Council. I'm your host, CBC Executive Director Pat Frew, and we appreciate you listening in and viewing today. We'd first of all like to thank St. Elizabeth Healthcare for being our title sponsor for all of our CBC luncheons this year, and I'm delighted to say next year in 2021. Without the generous support of St. Elizabeth Healthcare and our other key partners, it would be incredibly difficult for us to fulfill our mission of advocating for a healthy business climate in Covington and providing our members access, opportunity, and growth. We are honored to have great people on our board today, like Bruno Ciaccomuzzi, Senior VP and Chief Operating Officer of St. Elizabeth on our board. Thanks to all our great board members on today's call. And you'll hear from Bruno a little bit later in the program as he introduces the director of the St. Elizabeth Cancer Center, Dr. Doug Flora, who is our speaker today. Just a few announcements today. As you can see on the screen, we are priming for the 2021 calendar year. You can see a listing of our luncheons for next year. For the foreseeable future, all of our events will be virtual, but stay tuned for as the warm weather comes in 3 months, we will hopefully be seeing a loosening of the restrictions on group meeting capacities. We will keep you safe and keep you alerted on this as new announcements come down the pike. The CBC will also be holding a virtual new member orientation next Tuesday, the 22nd, from noon to 1 p.m. Contact Christine Barth, our operations manager, and Christine, if you will, just list your email in the chat so that folks can reach out to you if they're interested in attending. This is open not only to new members, but prospective members as well. And we've had many new businesses join in the last few months with a special half-off discount offer we've been sharing this fall. This is scheduled to end at the end of the year, so don't delay in signing up. Again, Christine can assist you with all of that as well. As we do every month, we now want to pass the microphone to Tom West, Covington's Economic Development Director, to tell us the latest growth developments in the city. Tom, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thanks, Pat. It's great to be with everybody here for this last luncheon of the year. Hopefully 2021 is going to be a lot less weird than 2020 has been. I want to be very, very brief today, but I've got some great things I think to end the year on. Those of you who were paying attention to the news last week saw the tremendous announcement that Protective Life is moving their regional headquarters to Covington. They're going to be taking about 67,000 square feet of River Center, which basically gets River Center pretty much full at this point. Pretty awesome considering it was about half empty not so long ago. So the folks at Corporex, Triad, and if we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit too, the city have all worked very, very hard to achieve that. Even during the pandemic, when unemployment rates have kind of skyrocketed, I think Covington has been extremely fortunate through the hard work of a lot of folks that I just mentioned. We have actually added 2,100 new jobs. They've either been added or they've been announced that they're going to be added within the next year or so. We've also announced $85.6 million of private investment in the city. And again, those are things that the city has been involved with that we know about and that we're participating with. So we've actually leveraged public investment against that 85.6 million of private investment. So the momentum, despite the pandemic and everything else that's gone on, continues. We just in the last week or so added brand new staff to our department. We now have a dedicated, and Pat's smiling because he knows her and he actually recommended her. But Susan Smith, who was with Meet NKY for about 20 years, is now, instead of marketing for people to come here for, a few days or a week to a convention, she's now going to be marketing for companies to come here and stay and make this their corporate home. So we're very pleased to welcome Susan Smith to the team. In the next week or so, you should be hearing an announcement about the latest grant program that we have for COVID relief. This is community development block grant funding. The city had $350,000 in that pool, and we're making grants up to $50,000 to help small businesses. And I'm not allowed to say who it is yet, but we did pick up another benefactor for another $275,000 in the last week. We'll be announcing that too. I just don't want to get ahead of them on that, but that's very exciting. It means we can help about 6 additional businesses that we weren't going to be able to help before. So we're very, very grateful for that. And then finally, I want to wrap it up really quickly here by giving a shout out to the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, Secretary Gray and District 6. I mean, it's been an aggravation, and everybody knows that. I mean, having to detour around. Of course, I live in Covington and work in Covington, so I'm not really bothered by it personally. And you all should live and work here too. But I know it has inconvenienced a lot of folks. But you think about how much worse it could have been if it had been damaged to the point where either A, it was not repairable at all, or that it would take longer than 6 weeks. And even as much damage that was done, for the cabinet to have been able to pull this off. And I saw Secretary Gray yesterday, and he is extremely confident that it will reopen next week on time as promised and safely. I mean, we really dodged a big time bullet there. And I think maybe it woke enough people up to understand that we do need to solve that bridge problem. But I think we're very, very fortunate, and hats off to the cabinet for doing that. Can't say enough nice things about them. Despite the aggravation we're all feeling, we really got away lucky this time. Thanks, Pat. Everybody have happy holidays, and I'll see you in 2021.
Hey, Tom, before you get off here, 2 things. First of all, thank you for mentioning the bridge. We would be remiss if we didn't remind people that it is scheduled to reopen next Wednesday. And as Tom said, everybody along the way, all the experts and all the people from the transportation department have told us they are moving right on schedule. So we do anticipate that happening. And it is a big kudos to the state and the transportation department for helping to make that happen so quickly. So the other thing too, Tom, I just wanted to double check the 2,100 new jobs and the 86.6 million in private investment. Is that just for this year? Is that basically just in the, this pandemic year?
Yeah, that's just 2020 that we have announced. And the mayor had said 1,300 jobs on Tuesday night at the commission meeting. And I had to correct him afterwards and send out an email. He is correct that 1,300 jobs have been approved for incentives by the city this year. The other 800 in there were a number of jobs we did not need to incentivize because Fidelity Investments added those folks even without incentives. So hats off to Fidelity. And then the 255 jobs that were announced last week, which we just have to do some legislative things in early January to approve those incentives. But those protective life jobs, the 255 were not included in his number either. So.
Okay, well, that's great. Yeah,
I got to spin it, and make it bigger. So.
Yeah. Well, and
it is real. It is real.
Yeah, it always helps when it's accurate. By the way, so thank you, Tom, and thanks for all you've done, and we appreciate you being a part of these calls because people do want to know what's going on with the city, and it's always better when it seems to be a steady stream of good news. But They appreciate you and appreciate all your hard work.
And support our small businesses, our restaurants and bars. They're still struggling, and winter is going to make it even worse. So whatever you can do, gift cards, to-go orders, whatever you feel comfortable with, try to help those folks out. They're struggling, and we need them here when all this is over. So
that's right. Great. Thanks, Tom. Good word all the way around. So Tom will also address, he will be the main speaker at our luncheon on January 21st, talking about the 4 strategic focus industries the city is centering its attention. So you'll definitely want to be a part of that and listen in and see how they've been doing since that strategy was enacted almost a year ago. So now it's time to hear from Bruno Ciaccamuzzi of St. Elizabeth Healthcare, again, a CBC board member. We value him a lot. And he is going to introduce our guest speaker today. Bruno, take it away.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. It's good to be here today in St. Elizabeth. We were proud and happy to sponsor for 2020 and certainly look forward to doing that again for 2021. It certainly has been an interesting year, and we look for a much brighter 2021. Hey, just a little bit about St. Elizabeth, where, as you know, we operate 6 hospitals and more than 150 primary care centers located in Northern Kentucky and Indiana. We're a member of the Mayo Clinical Care Network. We're a mission-based organization committed to improving the health of the communities that we serve, and we provide more than $116 million of uncompensated care to benefit our communities annually. For more information, we'd encourage you to visit us at www.stelizabeth.com. So with that, I'm excited to have Dr. Doug Flora help us close out this year, and he's agreed to give us an update on the St. Elizabeth Cancer Center. Let me tell you a little bit about Doug. He currently serves as the Executive Medical Director for the Oncology Services at St. Elizabeth Medical Center. He was recently named the Robert Del Ann Sathy Endowed Chair in Oncology. Doug was born and raised in Cincinnati. He graduated from The Ohio State University College of Medicine in 1999 and has been named a Cincinnati Magazine top doctor in hematology and oncology for the past consecutive 15 years. He's a board member of the Kentucky Society of Clinical Oncology, the American Cancer Society, and he's a regional board, and also the Andy and Jordan Dalton Foundation. In his spare time, Doug enjoys international travel with his wife and 3 children. So we all know that's been curtailed a little bit this past year. Please welcome a friend, a colleague, and Dr. Doug Flora. The show is yours. Thank you.
Everybody, thank you for the warm welcome, Bruno and Tom and Pat. Glad to be back here amongst you guys. I know that some of you probably were present when I introduced our aspirations for this cancer program and cancer center in a prior CBC luncheon. And so today I'm looking forward to sharing some of the execution of those aspirations. So some of these slides will be familiar and then updated with new data. And then I'll also try and lay out some of the groundwork for what we're working on as we move forward and trying to maybe even more so get outside of the walls of our hospital system to help the community. So I'll share my screen here so you don't have to look at me in my bow tie any longer, but we're going to talk about promises poured in cement today. Somebody nod if you can see that. Good. So, you know, when I first addressed you guys, we were in the planning phases. We were hopeful. We had made a lot of promises to our community, and many of you on here, I see the list of attendees are generous benefactors and people who supported and bought into our vision for what this can be. And so thank you, and you know who you are. But part of this for us was also getting the word out about the good work that was already being done and how this new building would help us do the things that we already do well, even better. And so I'm really proud of this team. We've hired some amazing people. I think we've added at least 100 new jobs in the building, and the recruiting of the really high-end clinicians has been going even better than I'd hoped. And I'm a eternally optimistic person, but the people that we've been able to bring in to this community to help care for the patients of our region, I think we're about 2 or 3 years ahead of where I'd even hoped to be. So as we work through this, I'll direct you for those of you that have not been able to visit the building because of all the coronavirus stuff and the restrictions on tours. I will happily get any and all of you through in small doses once it's allowed to be done. In the meanwhile, I'd refer you to St. Elizabeth's website, or if you just hit YouTube, St. Elizabeth Healthcare. I've narrated a tour of the building, going room to room to room. And this is it. If you haven't been here recently, we've been open since the first week of October. We had our ribbon cutting and a bunch of nice speeches about what we hope to build together. And as the clinician in charge, I'm tickled to say that the operational teams did a remarkable job putting this team together. The doctors love it. The patients love it. Our satisfaction scores right now, we just got back from one of our love metrics is likelihood to recommend to friends and family. And for I think about the 18 doctors that were reported most recently, all 18 were above 95% likelihood to recommend, and the average was about 97.8 or 97.9%. And that's a love metric for me as the doctor to say, would you trust us to take care of your wife or your sister? And so it's very gratifying, not just that I know the good work that's being done, but the patients are recognizing that, because that's obviously what this is all about. What this building has allowed us to do as a team is co-locate 60 different clinicians and researchers in one building, taking maybe 21 different offices and combining them in one space. And so those doctors can now walk 10 feet over to consult their colleague and say, hey, I'd like to introduce you to this person. We're busy. This place is hopping already, and we're seeing 400 to 500 patients a day. I think the other day we gave 135 chemotherapy infusions, but because Kathy Jennings and her operational team have been so carefully planning, we don't have wait rooms. We really have not seen people waiting even 2 minutes before their room for the physician exam room and visit, which is another thing that we've really been interested in. I did mention on here the RTOS system. It's a real-time location system, and those of you guys that work in those businesses will understand what this lets us do on the clinic staff standpoint. Everyone in the building is badged, staff and patients, and we have I would say almost like an air traffic control that's helping navigate the building, so we can see where our backlogs are, or our bottlenecks are forming, and adjust those in real time. Say if the lab is 6 deep or the port access station is behind, that real-time location system is built with reporting functions that will let us know where our building needs help, so that we reduce wait time and improve the patient's experience as well. It also has worked out really well for those of you guys who are having to adjust your own businesses for COVID. It really lets us do contact tracing, and the big building lets us do some social distancing. And there are a lot of things built into this building in terms of HEPA filters and terrazzo floors that are antivirus. But if someone enters our building later, tests positive for COVID, we can run a report and in a minute identify anyone who was within 6 or 8 feet of that person, which has been really, really unexpected, happy silver lining for us. And then most importantly for our patients, that everybody is seen in one place by one team under one roof. And I'll get into that a little bit more as I move through some of my slides here. Okay, so this is one to revisit from a year ago, I think. I just want to give you some table settings so you understand why this building exists and why I have a job and why this is so critically important for our region. While we talk today, there will be 3 people diagnosed with cancer, and it's particularly meaningful to me today because I was with one of those people 10 minutes before we logged on, and it's a dear friend of mine and a staff member here at this hospital that I work with probably 6 or 8 hours a day, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so one of those 3 is somebody dear to me. And so talk about a mission moment. We lose about 29 people a day in the Commonwealth, which I know is crazy that still happens from cancer. And we continue to lead the country in lung cancer diagnoses, stage at diagnosis, and lung cancer deaths. Although I'm going to show you how we're addressing that proactively. And for the business guys in the room, obviously you see the cost because you're insuring your employees and you're seeing the cost of lost wages and lost work and disability, and it's up to about 3.8 billion for cancer-related treatments and costs just in Kentucky alone. I wanted to revisit this slide from what I showed you the last time to remind you that half of the cases in Kentucky that we're diagnosing are fixable, treatable, and screenable. Meaning that if we can get the word out, and that's largely my job as the storyteller in chief here for the cancer program, is to try and increase the number of people who are identified when the cancer is in its earliest and faintest footsteps. And we are doing that effectively. But so you see this, that if we did nothing other than address lung, female breast, colon and rectum, and cervix, we've cut the number of cancer patients in half without inventing a single new drug or technology. This is another throwback to an old slide, just to remind you, we are still a hotbed, despite the fact that most of the areas of the country are improving briskly in terms of cancer diagnoses. Our region specifically, and our larger region, if you include Appalachia, is still the worst of the worst in the country. And this is essentially still ground zero with some progress being made on some of those fronts. That's enough table setting. I'll leave you with one last slide before I get hopeful again. And this is a new version of an old slide that you guys have seen before. We continue to rank 51st out of 51 or out of 50 states. I guess we include DC in this data. Utah being the best place to be if you want to have a safe cancer-free life, because there's no smoking, drinking, or obesity there. But we're well above the national average, and we are continuing at the bottom tier and the very worst of the worst for cancer in all of the states. This is part of the reason why. This is this year's report card from the American Lung Association. And for those of you that work in city government or legislature or are able to exert some influence, these aren't the scores that Kentucky needs to see to change these curves. And so, you know, despite fairly sizable tobacco settlements, we're still well below anticipated or expected investments in things like tobacco cessation. We're worse in the country once again for smoking. We are worse in the country for tobacco taxes, despite a 50-cent increase last year. We're in the bottom tier there. And we really don't do great educating our youth in terms of other available options that are safer choices. Part of this is investment, and this is where community comes in. And many of you I know personally are very gracious donors to what we're trying to do. And it's not just about a cancer center or a cancer building. We're really trying to educate the patients to try and address their social determinants of health. Obesity is a risk factor, alcoholism, obviously tobacco and radon. And we're chipping away at these, and we're seeing some early and encouraging wins. Some of this is going to have to happen at the state level as well, though. And I'm the chair of the advocacy group for the Kentucky Society of Clinical Oncology, and I'm also involved in the ACS Community Action Network, which is kind of the legislative arm, trying to help our legislators understand that, you know, if you can invest a little bit on screening and prevention, we're not going to be out quite as much on the back end with treatment and people missing productivity at work. This was a cool slide put together actually by Trey Grayson's daughter. Alex did a project for Wood Hudson as a research project for in between her freshman and sophomore years. But this is an interesting summary of how we do in terms of our disparities of care. There's obviously great inequity. Those of you that work in and around Covington understand that there are sort of two populations there. And unfortunately, most of the zip codes in St. Elizabeth's primary service area are represented poorly in terms of quality of access to care, whether it be transportation, whether it be food deserts, whether it just be access to physicians that look like those populations that they'll trust. And so these groups are people I'm going to specifically and personally focus on this year to try and address some of the equity issues in our own community, because we're not doing as well in our communities of color, in our Black patients, and our Hispanic patients, and our Asian Pacific patients as we are in our well-heeled white patients. And I think you can understand why that's not acceptable to me as a person or as a doctor. And so more to follow on this, but we're really, really working on disparities of care this year in the cancer program. Some hope is on the horizon. So this is new data actually published November 12th, and I was glad to make this slide. So despite being 50th out of, or 51 out of 51 in terms of states for cancer diagnoses for lung, I'll point your attention to screen right. Kentucky has now climbed to third best in the country for lung cancer screening. And that's in large part due to stuff that Bruno's team, my team, and others have built here at St. Elizabeth. You guys know Garen's passion for our community, and the investment that our board and Garen and our senior leadership have made in this screening program. I think disputably we are probably, if not the number one, we're the number two screening program in the country right now. And I'm very proud of this team. We're one of the few centers that has a medical director for lung cancer screening. It's a physician who's dedicated to this. We have a bunch of lung cancer navigators. We've just now successfully recruited our third thoracic lung cancer surgeon, which is an enormous accomplishment for a community hospital to have 3 dedicated lung cancer surgeons. And it's in large part due to the success of this program. So when you see Massachusetts is ahead of us, there's a hospital there called Leahy, a healthcare system that essentially invented lung cancer screening. We now do more per month than they do, but they have a 2-year head start. So we're closing. So I hope to show you guys this slide and an update 2 more years from now. And I expect that Kentucky can be number 1 or number 2 in the country for lung cancer screening, in which case we know downstream we're going to save lives. We know we already are. So this is the progress of this, and I point out this program specifically as an example for the folks in the audience. I know this is a business-based discussion and a business-based talk, but you also understand that in hospital systems, good business is efficient care, where we eliminate waste, and good business is providing the highest quality, highest reliability care, just like it is if you guys are in manufacturing. You know, I believe in this, and as we've worked through these processes, we've now leveraged our health record. We've leveraged a bunch of clinical transformation teams and Six Sigma types to really make this one of the predominant and premier lung cancer screening programs in the country, so much so that we were awarded a Continuum GO2 Center of Excellence Award, which is very, very rare in community hospitals. And our leadership of that program is now leading most national charges and sitting and chairing most of the committees, not just at the state level, but at the national level. Our doctor is in the room, as it were. So some progress for our little parochial hospital system, right? Which I say facetiously because we are anything but. This is the trends of, again, for lung cancer screening. You can see that on the pandemic plunge in orange, we dropped to about 20 scans. But since then, we've had 4 consecutive record months in a row until a slight dip this month again. I'm pleased to say that we've now crossed 15,000 scans, which again is probably enough to be number 2 in the country, just numerically speaking. And we're doing about 400 to 410, 420 a month, and finding a lung cancer every 52 scans. So just imagine, if you will, we can do limitless amounts of these things if I can get the word out, and if people and businesses and people in our community buy into this concept. And if we do that and we find a cancer every 52 scans, probably 83% of those people are found in a stage where they can be cured. And that's lung cancer, our most lethal cancer. Finding people with an 83% chance to be home for Christmas dinner with their family this year is one of the most meaningful things that I'm going to be attached to in my career as a physician. So I want you guys to see this progress. And again, this is really careful planning and investment by Garen and our senior team to support this. When I first was talking about this, this was not a thing. And we're light years ahead of most other hospitals right now because we saw the opportunity early, and we said we were going to invest heavily in this particular population for Northern Kentucky. Good steady progress with the exception of that pandemic plunge. Again, as a business person, this is growth, and growth in program means growth in cures and saves. And so we're seeing that in execution, not just in vision now. What it's led to from a business standpoint for the Brunos of the world, and the reason that I get the support financially that we need to run this program, is that it is intimately correlated with the amount of lung cancer surgery that's done. So this is one of those triple aims for those of us in healthcare because it adds real value. For the clinician, it saves lives. For the patient, you get to go to dinner with your family. But for Garen and Lori Ritchie Baldwin and Bruno and the other good business people that are keeping this ship afloat, thoracic surgery is a good service line. It's one of our more favorable things in terms of reimbursement compared to, say, chronic admissions for COPD to the hospital, which we lose money on all of those with our Medicaid and Medicare patients. So some of this is smart business too, while we happen to be saving lives. And so I'm proud that it's accomplishing the goals of everybody in the building, even the people out at Dulwich that are worried about the finance side of things. We're seeing now 146% greater chance of being found in a stage 1 and a 70% decrease, 72% decrease in the number of people found with stage 4, which obviously translates to cure rate. About 83% of people, as I've mentioned, are likely to be cured. Many, many more if you're found in stage 1. And this number, N213, is actually up to about 285 people have been caught with cancer in an early stage since we started screening versus the people who didn't screen. And you can see on screen right, you still have about a 50% chance of being found with a stage 4 lung cancer at diagnosis. And so my goal is to increase the proportion of people who are screened. And I think in years 3 and 4 of our program next year, we'll start to see a significant drop where we probably should not see this large green bar on stage 4 anymore after this year. This is a survival if you are found in those early stages. Stage 1 specifically, there's about a 92% chance of cure. And unfortunately still, even with great new drugs and lots and lots of research by people like Chuck and Ray and Bexion and Tim Schroeder at CTI, we're still not curing stage 4 lung cancers, and we are unlikely to do so. So the paradigm has shifted now to early screening and detection, just as we're familiar with for these other tumors that we know well in terms of mammography and colonoscopy. But we're still chipping away at the breast cancer as well. And I will say I am gratified as a doctor, a cancer patient, and as a leader here, that our board has put their money where their mouth is. And so we've now incentivized the types of behaviors that we believe in as an institution. Bruno mentioned that we're mission-based, and it really is a heartfelt thing around here. And part of our culture, part of the esprit de corps, is that we are going to cure cancer. And so part of the incentives for all of our docs and part of the incentives for all of our management team is trying to get the breast cancer screening number to a defined goal above 83%, colon cancer 80%, lung cancer screening scans, we want to go up 10%. And we're incentivizing everyone in the building so that we're all rowing in the same direction and we're all aligned on that vision that we can each have a part in curing these cancers if we can find them in a stage 1. And I'm gratified to say that for this population, the breast cancer ladies, including my own staff member and dear friend, the 10-year survival for breast cancer is now improved to 91%. So we're really starting to chip away at that. Again, bottom right, more disparities of care because we're not doing as well in all of our populations as we are in the well-off white populations that populate some of our centers. I talked at our last visit in terms of our strategic priorities, and one of them obviously is research. We care a ton about clinical research here. My brother, in fact, directs the lung cancer and the oncology research program. We were affected by cancer pretty early in our lives when our mom died of cancer, and so he has dedicated his life to finding a cure, just like I've dedicated most of mine to preventing and screening. And so our goal here now is that 100% of our patients are screened for clinical trial on arrival. 100% of our oncologists now are investigators on trial, and I will not hire anyone else that's not supportive of research as a standard of care. And our goal is to climb our participation levels to 10% in 5 years, and that would be way, way above even those metrics that are required to earn NCI designation. So we're being very, very ambitious in that. I do think that we have a lot of partners on the phone here that get the importance of clinical research and bench research for finding better drugs, finding better supportive care, finding better surgeries, and better screening tools. And so you'll hear more about that in coming days as we're starting to have some pretty important and interesting developments on our research side. So I'll just leave that teaser there and keep watching for news. Precision medicine. I think I gave 4 or 5 slides of that in my last talk. We now have a fully functional Center for Precision Medicine and Genomic Health in our building. We have launched a cancer prevention clinic for the worried well, or for people who have a genetic predisposition for cancer identified. There's a place for those patients to go now forever with good continuity and someone who's responsible for screening who needs a CT scan, who needs an MRI, who needs an ultrasound, who needs other blood tests and those sorts of things. And they're really leaning into some clinical research, looking at some of the blood tests that you guys may have read about, looking at circulating tumor DNA. They can identify now the 10 most common cancers that we really don't screen well for. So the next generation of the lung cancer slides and the breast cancer and colon cancer slides is, can we just do a blood test and find these things before they're even visible as shadows on a CT scan? We are now screening 100% of women with breast cancer, 100% of ovarian cancer, 100% of pancreas, and all advanced prostate cancer for genetic mishaps as well. And in that program, they've now identified an additional 150 St. Elizabeth patients with genetic mishaps that we would not have known without this program. To translate that, that means that if we followed the rules and we only did genetic screening the people who met insurance criteria and had guaranteed reimbursement, we would have missed all 150 of those people. And now those are families that are saved for generations because we found that gene because of this program run by Dr. Phillips and by Jamie Grund, who are just doing amazing things. They've also been able to recruit a clinical PharmD from Miami, Florida, with a rare specialty in pharmacogenomics, which is how the body metabolizes drugs. And we're now using patients' genetic profiles to determine not just dose, but which drug is appropriate for that patient's metabolic makeup. And so you'll hear more about this as we're starting to build out this program as well. But again, these are things typically we would never have seen in Northern Kentucky. They're things that happen at Yale or Stanford or UC San Francisco or MD Anderson, not things that we would typically be able to recruit someone like this PharmD to this region without this beautiful building and the programs that it allows us to build. And I'm sincere, we would not have recruited Dr. Brooke Phillips either, which has been one of the most important ads for cancer care in our region, probably in the last 30 years. Integrative oncology is near and dear to my own heart. I think you guys probably heard about a $5 million gift that we got from an international company called doTERRA about a year ago, helping us start to pilot some of these things. Under integrative health, we've obviously got a lot of lung cancer screening, but we're also building dedicated nurse navigators in all of our disciplines that will be owned by the patient and travel with the patient throughout the entire continuity of their diagnosis to bereavement or survivorship. We built an integrative oncology floor, which has the added benefits of some of the softer touches that you'll see on screen, right? Demonstration Teaching Kitchen is open today with people learning how to cook healthily to reduce the risk of cancer recurring, or how to reduce the risk of colon polyps. I think today it's a giveaway of gift cards and candy and other less healthy things down there, but we're using that space for that. We have art and music therapy. We have yoga studios. We have a dedicated space that we've given for rent-free to our community partners, Cancer Family Care and Cancer Support Community, with counseling in the building, in addition to massage, acupuncture, aromatherapy, aromatouch, a retail pharmacy, a lot of teaching and education sessions for the people in our community. And so again, it's a very sizable investment by our board, and they believe in the mission of treating not just the cancer, but treating the whole person. And so this whole person care is actually happening as we speak downstairs on that floor. And it's a sight to behold when you guys do get into the building and you get to see it. I hope not as patients, but more as guests. I think you'll see the commitment we've made to this community is it's pretty mind-blowing, because none of that is revenue generating for the folks at Dole-Wick or for Garen or for our CFO. They just believe so much in doing this. So we've built a quality division. I think I mentioned it in my original talk with you guys. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt, and I really do believe in efficiencies. I read all sorts of manufacturing books like The Goal, and I think that what we have launched here, the first 3 hires were quality people. Capital Q. And so we have process improvement and project management that are specifically work for our quality division of oncology. I chair the oncology safety and quality committee. It's made up of a bunch of physicians and a bunch of people who are smarter than physicians to try and figure out how to fix the problems that the clinicians in the room identify. And so we've got a ton of projects going on, trying to reduce hospitalization, trying to reduce readmissions, trying to reduce late enrollments in hospice, trying to talk about important things like end of life care and advanced care planning. And it's just great to have staff that can start to tackle these weighty issues and do it better than I could do had I had the time myself. And so I'm really proud of those teams. We're building multidisciplinary teams in a lot of different areas. Already we've had lung up and running for a few years. This month we've launched breast and gynecologic oncology, where we bring together all of the stakeholders in those service lines to try and figure out how do we get breast cancer patients to get to a same-day biopsy so that you don't have that 7-day lag of terror that my friend and staff member just had. How do we make sure that everyone who needs to be seen by a palliative care expert can get in to see that palliative care expert without barriers to care? And this has led to us getting some really favorable national coverage and an outstanding achievement award from the Commission on Cancer, which again is very, very hard to achieve. And you have to have a comprehensive cancer program to even be considered for it. And this team was able to put that together. I talk about recruiting quite a bit because that really is where the rubber meets the road for us. As you guys know, the quality of the employee determines the quality of the work. And all too often, people who are really, really clinically talented, researchers and people from MD Anderson's and Boston and Dana-Farber and Sloan Kettering, have not considered Northern Kentucky a wonderful place to settle. I think we all know better, but it's been a challenge for us to recruit people that aren't fresh out of school. And so I'm gratified to say that now, with the advent of all the things that I've shared with you and the programs that I've been able to introduce because of the resources available, we've added all of these people. One of which, the one medical oncologist, was the director of lung cancer at University of Louisville, left the academic center to build an academic type program here. Dr. Cloker is now opening clinical trials that we would never have had the opportunity to open if it were not for his national reputation. Now the pharmaceutical companies that used to pass by our building and go to the James or go to one of the larger academic centers are now interested in us opening clinical trials here because Dr. Cloker is at the helm, and they trust his work and they know it's going to be really solid research done. We've hired a couple of other medical oncologists that specialize in malignant hematology, and then one also to expand our presence as we start to build out in New St. Elizabeth, Dearborn County. We've hired a third thoracic surgeon who does nothing but lung cancer. She arrives in about 3 weeks. We have a contract pending with a surgical oncologist who's the chief of hepatico-pancreatico-biliary surgery, so liver, bile duct, pancreas, at an academic center on the East Coast, and he's verbally accepted our offer. He has yet to sign the contract, but I feel very good about this being our first major East Coast surgeon that we've been pursuing that will land. And there's another surgical oncologist to be hired as well to do the big surgeries that typically we've not felt comfortable doing at St. Elizabeth. And I think we'll get 2 by June, and we've never had those here before. As I mentioned, medical director lung cancer screening, medical director for integrative oncology, Dr. Kurapati, is signing a contract to run the integrative oncology fold here as well as another 100+ people that are supporting those providers in the building. I really am hoping, because this is one of my personal tasks, that you guys are starting to hear about all of this good work out in the community. I was sad to see Barrett Brunsman left the Business Courier for Children's Hospital, because he was starting to really share our story to folks on the other side of the river about all of these amazing outreaches that we're having. These are some of the affiliations that have grown out of this process in the last couple of years. Many of those are places where we've placed board members and are now not just influencing direction of not-for-profits or significant enterprises, but also leading in policy development and working in Frankfurt with our legislators and really influencing the care of patients in our community. One of which is another thing near and dear to my heart from a research perspective. Through our affiliation with the Kentucky Society of Clinical Oncology, we may now be gaining approval for the first time ever for Medicaid patients to be covered for treatment on clinical trials, which is an oversight in Kentucky that does not exist elsewhere. And through advocacy and through the weight of what we're trying to build, I think we've finally addressed that. And so that again addresses the disparities of care, because typically Medicaid patients tend to be persons of color or socioeconomically disadvantaged populations, and they need these clinical trials desperately to have access to the good new drugs that we would all want for our own family members. And so as we are starting to work outside of our own hospital walls, I think that you're starting to hear us tell our story a little bit more forcefully, that we're doing great work here. And I'm proud of these organizations supporting the things that we've been doing. And I'm glad that they want to be a part of things, because that means our message is resonating with our community. I welcome any questions. I think I'm run out of time. We have a few minutes left for questions, and I'll pass it back to Pat if people have lent questions, and be happy to field anything that I can help, COVID or otherwise. I am a doctor too, so if there are questions about that, I'm okay with those questions.
Yeah, yes, Doug, and thank you. Great comments there. We do have a few questions. Talk a little bit with the growth of, Gravity Diagnostics and, their imprint increasing on Russell. How might the Cancer Center partner better or more than they're doing already, if any, with Gravity?
Yeah, well, I think, I hope most of you know what a big story this is, right? This is the little engine that could, and doing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tests when nobody else could do these tests with that kind of turnaround. And it seemed like, again, this is a small grown company locally that decided to be here and has turned into a wonderful venture for everybody involved, and sort of leads the way for private labs around the country in terms of volumes and quality of outputs. I do talk a lot. We have a lot of COVID disaster planning meetings, and I'm very, very close with our lab director. It's saved us in the early goings when you had a 12-day wait to send something out to Utah or ARUP or or one of the gigantic companies that process these things in, by the 100,000, Gravity was here, and a local company was an eager partner to try and help the patients of our region. It's just another story, like Tim moving CTI here, or what Vexion's been able to do. And a lot of you other folks on the call, you understand it's a really ripe environment for this. And so this CBC stuff that you guys do, it's bridges that are built between people that run Gravity and St. Elizabeth at places like this that actually get this stuff done. So to their credit, I would say from a testing standpoint, we're finally getting to the place where the demand is meeting the supply. A lot of times it wasn't Gravity's bottlenecks, it was aliquots of reagents and media that we could not obtain except by really strict requirements. Who was going to get 60 vials of this for the longest time? And so hopefully we're starting to overcome some of those logistic and supply line issues. But yeah, it's been a meaningful relationship where you see bridges being built that I think are probably permanent.
Yeah, and talking in that same building too, Dr. Flora, Bexion too, with them, getting so close to getting the cancer cure here. How will that impact your work?
Yeah, well, I'm gratified. Chuck and Ray are friends. My brother Dan and I have been part of their scientific advisory board occasionally when we stop in for meetings and they're looking for medical oncology help. They've got a really, really good team assembled, including one of our doctors, Dr. Rich Curry, who had patient number 1 on this original trial. One of our neuro-oncologists, and it's great. It's a close relationship. Everyone has been involved in our cancer center and vice versa. I know Chuck was on here. If he hasn't dropped off, we want your trial here. This, and we're working towards those sorts of things because it just makes perfect sense for us to be doing these things together, so the whole region wins as a team.
Yes, as a reminder to everyone, if you have any other questions, list them on the chat and we'll get them over. Mr. Hoffer, who I know is near and dear to your heart for the support and your foundation and different groups there. What else should we look for down the horizon? What else is next other than the increased screenings, which this is all great information?
Yeah, so those pillars of clinical research, screening and prevention, early detection, the genetics and precision medicine stuff, we're taking that west. And so we're fully taking over operations. I think you've probably read by now, for formerly Dearborn County Hospital. It was rebranded 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, as High Point Health. And like many community hospitals, they were struggling to get by anyway financially because of the economies of scale and a lot of competition in their backyard, with Mercy and TriHealth building fairly large centers pretty proximal to that. I will tell you, they invited us in about 3 years ago from a cancer perspective, and we opened up an office when their original private group pulled out in the dark of night around Christmas a couple years ago. And I think that really helped us build a relationship with their leadership of trust. And so when they got into trouble, they approached Garen and our board, and we were very happy to help. We really do believe that your medical care should be local, and we want to keep the care in that community. I'll tell you, from a cancer perspective, we're already out there. We're seeing the majority of the patients in Greendale and in Lawrenceburg and a lot of the 5 counties that surround that. And we're making a fairly heavy investment, upwards of $100 million over the next 5 years, including building a new cancer center that's a smaller version of what I've just discussed with you here, so that the patients in those 5 counties or the 9 counties and 5 communities have access to the same life-saving stuff that we've talked about for the patients in our own region. And I just think that's where the mission comes in. St. Elizabeth goes where we're needed, and it's not about us, it's about the patients in those communities. And I see investments and things like this paying off for that region as well.
You talked a little bit too, Doug, about how now you're getting clinical trials where formerly people would have passed as James. When you look at the renown of our area and the business aspect of this and what that looks like downstream, I don't think a lot of people realize the great impact that's going to have. Can you give us a flavor of that and what we might see, from a business perspective, how our area is looked at differently because of the work that you're doing there?
Yeah, well, I think one of the advantages that we've had over some of the other larger systems is we're nimble. And so we're innovating actively. And I would say one of the things that we're really good at, and Bruno would echo this, we may be the best at getting better in any system I've worked in for a while. It's a continuous improvement thing here. And this recruitment of these high-end, technically skilled people to this region bears a lot of fruits. Those are people who are healthy incomes, who pay taxes, who go out to the very restaurants that you guys are talking about us supporting with our gift cards. they bring that innovation and that teamwork, as well as healthy incomes to this region so that we can continue to reinvest in our own. I would say that for me, specifically as a clinician, as a cancer patient, the doctors here are already great, have always been great. We were very blessed that a lot of people wanted to settle in this area anyway, because they went to Bishop Rosser High School and they come home. Campbell County girls always, I will say the difference now is that we are seeking people nationally instead of regionally. And we used to compete with the other healthcare systems for the brightest of the new graduates from the local programs. And now we're being approached by academic chairs at East Coast facilities because they've seen the things that we're talking about online. And that's never happened before. And so I'm very bullish on where we take this. As you guys know from all the Jim Collins stuff, it's about the people you put on the bus. And I'm able to load this bus with a different quality of applicant than I might have been 3 years ago. And so I think we're really pulling this thing forward.
That's great. That's great. And Dr. Flora, we thank you again for all the work that you're doing, the great information you shared today. And as I said earlier, our relationship with St. Elizabeth is really valued here at the CBC, but what you do for the community goes beyond that. So thank you again very much for all that you're doing. Great. Well, thank you all for joining us today as part of our luncheon. We look forward to having you back here hopefully next month when Tom West again talks about the 4 focus areas that the city is examining to help them to continue to grow business. It's obviously working with more than $85 million in investment this year and over 2,100 jobs created in 2020 alone. That's just mind-boggling. So join us again next month. Thanks again for St. Elizabeth for being our title sponsor this year and next. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this today. We hope you have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We look forward to seeing you virtually next month. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Have a great day. Happy holidays, everybody.